In recent days, a situation has been developing in global politics that many experts are calling one of the most dangerous in decades. Relations between Venezuela and the United States, already extremely tense, are rapidly approaching a point of no return. According to the Associated Press, the escalation began after Donald Trump, speaking at a rally in Texas, announced an expansion of the U.S. military presence off the coast of Venezuela. Within just a few days, satellite images published by Naval News confirmed the arrival of a full U.S. strike group in the Caribbean, led by the aircraft carrier USS George Washington. This decision provoked a sharp response in Caracas, where Maduro called the U.S. move a declaration of a hunt and an attempt at the physical removal of the head of a sovereign state. Tens of thousands of people took to the streets of Caracas with banners reading "No to U.S. invasion," while state television broadcasted Maduro's address, in which he promised to fight to the last bullet. However, as Financial Times reports, a new player unexpectedly entered the conflict: China. According to official statements from Beijing, dozens of Chinese naval vessels were dispatched to the Atlantic to conduct joint exercises and protect trade routes. Sources within the Chinese government cited by South China Morning Post claim that this is not merely symbolic presence, but direct military support for Venezuela. A high-ranking official, speaking on condition of anonymity, stated bluntly, "China will not allow investments worth tens of billions of dollars to be threatened by a change of political regime in Caracas." This statement is far from empty rhetoric. Over the past decade, China has invested more than $70 billion in Venezuelan oil and gas projects, as well as financed infrastructure and telecommunications programs. In Caracas, China's support has been openly welcomed. At a recent press conference, Maduro, holding the latest Huawei smartphone, publicly thanked the Chinese government, declaring, "China is our brother, our strategic ally, with whom we will build the future." This moment was immediately broadcast on China's state television CCTV, presented as a sign of the unbreakable alliance of the two countries against U.S. aggression. The Washington Post analysts note that while such gestures from Maduro are largely symbolic, they conceal a serious military political strategy. In Washington, alarm is growing. Pentagon officials report that U.S. ships have already begun operations to intercept and destroy Venezuelan vessels, allegedly carrying drugs and weapons. Behind the scenes, however, the question looms ever larger. Will the U.S. risk a direct confrontation if Chinese forces actually move to defend Venezuela? The Wall Street Journal, citing sources in the National Security Council, writes that Trump privately considered a scenario of a limited naval blockade, but his advisors warn that if even a single Chinese destroyer were harmed, the consequences would be catastrophic. Particularly notable is the fact that Beijing, for the first time in its history, is effectively willing to challenge Washington not for its own interests, but for those of another country. This involves defending an ally in the opposite hemisphere, something previously thought impossible. According to experts at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, this signals that China is moving from a policy of regional defense to one of global expansion. Venezuela was chosen as the focal point simply because it holds the world's largest proven oil reserves and provides a strategic foothold in the Western Hemisphere, literally in the backyard of the United States. Meanwhile, an active propaganda campaign is unfolding on the streets of Caracas. State media are broadcasting footage of Chinese ships departing from Hainan ports, accompanied by commentary about brotherly support. Cuba's Granma newspaper has already called the event a new era of multilateralism, while Venezuelan Defense Minister Vladimir Padrino declared that joint exercises with China will be a guarantee of peace and security. U.S. allies in the region, Colombia and Brazil, have expressed concern. The president of Colombia told Reuters directly, "If Chinese ships enter the Caribbean, the balance of power will change forever." In Brazil, according to Folha de São Paulo, discussions are already underway regarding the possibility of providing military bases for American aircraft. Thus, the crisis is far beyond a bilateral conflict, turning into a question of regional security. The situation is further complicated by the fact that amid the events in Venezuela, Trump is actively campaigning, with a strong hand against dictators as a central theme. His speeches are filled with sharp statements. "We will not allow China to interfere in our region. Venezuela will be free." Yet behind this rhetoric lies a dilemma. Should the US confront China directly when the stakes are so high? Bloomberg analysts argue that the current crisis could become a turning point for global geopolitics. If China defends Venezuela, it would signal the collapse of the Monroe Doctrine, on which US policy in Latin America has been built for decades. Conversely, if the US succeeds in breaking resistance, it would send a clear message to all countries in the region. Washington is still the master in its hemisphere. At present, the situation is developing rapidly. In the coming weeks, joint exercises between the Chinese and Venezuelan navies are expected, with Nikkei Asia describing them as a rehearsal of coordinated actions under crisis conditions. Meanwhile, the Pentagon is placing bases in Puerto Rico and Miami on high alert, and US strategic B-52 bombers have been spotted over the Caribbean. The world holds its breath. We are witnessing the emergence of a new phase in great power confrontation, with Venezuela unexpectedly at the center. The main question, still unanswered, is whether the US will go all the way if China intervenes directly. The situation has sparked real debate within NATO. According to Politico, in Brussels corridors, allies failed to reach a consensus. The United Kingdom and Poland supported a hardline US approach, insisting on the need for a collective response in case of confrontation with China. Germany and France, however, took a more cautious stance. A source from the German Foreign Ministry stated that Berlin considers fighting China over Venezuela to be madness. Paris, meanwhile, proposed a diplomatic mission that could act as a mediator between Washington and Beijing. In Latin America, opinions are mixed. According to Spain's El País, Cuba and Nicaragua have officially expressed willingness to provide Venezuela with infrastructure for joint defensive actions. Meanwhile, Peru and Chile fear that the presence of Chinese ships could militarize the entire region and trigger an arms race. Meanwhile, global markets reacted immediately. Bloomberg notes that investors are pricing in the risk of a full-scale conflict that could paralyze oil supplies from the region. Foreign Affairs magazine writes in its latest issue, "We are witnessing the beginning of a new Cold War, but with a hotspot in the Western Hemisphere." Indeed, many analysts compare the current situation to the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962. Only now, instead of Soviet missiles, there is the Chinese fleet, and instead of Cuba, there is Venezuela. The question increasingly voiced in world capitals is whether this local crisis will escalate into a global confrontation. There is no answer yet, but one thing is clear: humanity has entered a new and dangerous stage where every misstep could lead to catastrophe.